Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. You have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, a very special time because we have a very special author with us today with her absolutely amazing book. I am your host, as always, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 going on 16 novels of suspense. My newest book is One Wrong Word, which you can see casually on the door behind me. And my new book is All This Could Be Yours, which will come out about this time next year. And you will hear all about it when the time comes. But today, we are here to celebrate this amazing and superly immersive, wonderful book, The Secret War of Julia Child by Diana Chambers. You will love it. It is out October 22nd from Source Books. So you are hearing about it here first, you lucky, lucky people, because this, look at this, The Secret War of Julia Child. Is there anything that could be more irresistible than that? The topic and the time and the main character. We all think we know everything about Julia Child, don't you? But you don't. You totally don't. And Diana has the scoop on all of it. And not only that, but this is a People magazine fall pick. And Diana is here today to talk with us about all things Julia Child and all things Diana Chambers. And we are so thrilled about it. Diana, welcome. We're so glad to see you today. What did you think when you heard about People magazine?
I was getting off the plane in Louisville, going to VoucherCon Mystery Conference, and I'm catching up with my emails in the airport, and I couldn't take it in. I'm like, what? And my husband had been ill, and it was this very emotional time for me. And then I see this, and I literally could not take it in. And so I just continued getting to the hotel, and then I looked at it again, and I'm thinking, what is this? And then I looked at the authors I was with, and I just about burst into tears because one of my idols, Richard Powers, was on it, and it was unbelievable to me. Don't think I've still really absorbed it. It was 10 years on this. Yeah.
What is the readership of People magazine? I think it's like 7 million people every week. I mean, honestly, I think that's it. And to have The Secret War of Julia Child be plucked from the millions of books that there are and put in that exalted position is really a testament to your hard work and your skill. And we will hear all about that in a minute. If I look over here, I am looking at the comments. As you know, here is Randy, who is here, and Katie, who is here. We love seeing both of you. Kathy Lanigan is here. So many people coming in now to hear about The Secret War of Julia Child, and we will hear all about that in a minute. You should know, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, we're so pleased that you are here this afternoon. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic by the marvelous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all reading and to keep us all together and to keep us all discovering new authors and fabulous, fabulous new books like The Secret War of Julia Child. Several dozen of us volunteers, and we are still going strong. So we are grateful that you are here today. Let me tell you a little bit about the fabulous Diana Chambers, and then I promise I'm going to let her talk. You're like, stop talking, Hank.
It's okay.
I hear from Diana. Okay, but I promise I'll do that in a minute. I want you to know that Diana Chambers was born with a book in one hand and a passport in the other. She studied Asian art history at university, worked at a translation agency in Paris, and then it was off to India to open an export business. Just run-of-the-mill life, like we all. She is an experienced scriptwriter, and her research has taken her around the world. Her latest novel, The Secret War of Julia Child, as I said, will be published October 22nd from the fabulous Source Books. Source Books is awesome, as we say, and lucky, lucky, lucky publisher and lucky, lucky, lucky author, I have to say. One more thing from me, and that is we are giving away a copy of The Secret War of Julia Child. Well, I'm not, because I'm keeping this, but the publisher is giving away a copy of this marvelous book. So just leave a question or a comment for Diana in the chat, and you will be automatically entered to win. We will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show, and we'll see who wins. Hey, Robin Stull, so nice to see you. And Renee is here in Florida. I hope you are safe, Renee. That's so scary what's happening. So, Diana, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, Renee says it is rainy. Rainy is maybe not the half of it, and we are thinking of you. Hey, Robin, nice to see you. So, Diana, can you just tell us? I mean, this is a question you're going to have to answer a million times as your book comes out, but just tell us what this book is about.
Actually, this morning, it came to me that my purpose in this was to reintroduce everyone to a Julia child you've never known, a Julia child I've never known, and the most remarkable, brave woman maybe I've ever been close to, because I really feel close to her. So she's had an amazing life, and I think it's good for all of us to know about that life. And so I think I'd like to talk about that, to share what I've learned. And also I want to talk about the setting in World War II, India and China and Southeast Asia, and what all these people went through in this little known theater of war. So
well, we'll get to all that. That's brilliant. Let's take things one thing at a time. So the people who are with us today can get all the lovely morsels and be tempted to read this, because it is everything that you could ever want about Julia Child. You say in your author notes that you didn't fall in love with Julia for her cooking. What did you fall in love with about her?
Well, to start with, I'm not a cook, and so I wasn't a fan of hers. I wasn't someone that knew her and loved her from the start. To me, she was this interesting cultural figure, but she meant really nothing to me other than our connection with France, where we both spent a lot of time. But when I read this about 10 years ago, that Julia had served with the OSS, so I was already, my interest was piqued, America's first intelligence agency, and that it was in India and China, something in me just clicked. And I think everything fell aside on my life, and I wanted to know more and more about the story. And the more I learned about Julia, the more I learned of her extraordinary courage, the way that she resisted the claims of society upon her, and the way she forged her own way in her own, with her own drive and ambition and energy.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the book and how the book is. And then I also want to talk about, of course, what comes underneath that. Because first of all, you have created a really riveting story. This is just a total immersion book. And we go on this sort of journey of discovery of Julia, of herself, of her discovering herself and who she is, and the sort of determination that she used to get where she is. Can you talk a little bit about the young Julia, how she starts in her career, and the determination and the, sort of grit that she uses, gumption, if I can use that word, to get.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it, Hank. She grew up in a time and a world in which the role of a woman was very constrained, and she was a woman in society. I think her family was in the social register of Southern California. Her mother was a Mayflower descendant. Her father was a prominent real estate developer. So she grew up with these, within these guidelines, shall we say. You do get a good education, but eventually you're going to get married. And when the book opens, it's right after she has been successfully thus far resisting her father's ultimatum that she married before age 30. She always had creative ambitions. She was throwing plays in her family's attic from a young age, not only producing them, but writing, acting, and sometimes starring in them. She couldn't play the lead role because she was too tall. Mm-hmm. So this is something she suffered with from a young age. She couldn't get shoes that fit. She had a difficult time. She was always the best friend. She was never the girlfriend. And so she was this interesting blend of super confident leader of the pack. Everyone loved her and followed her. But yet inside, she had her own self-doubts. She sought a creative career in New York, but it didn't pan out. And she returns home for her mother's death. And she's still resisting the push to get married, to do something proper. And then comes Pearl Harbor.
So she winds up in Washington, D.C., having been dumped by, as so many people's lives sort of start over after they get dumped by someone and they're looking for something else to do. Tell us where she wound up as what, and then what happened.
Okay, what I have to tell you is that Julia grew up reading Nancy Drew. She loved mystery, she loved spy books. And of course, because she knew how to maneuver in the world, she managed to get a job in Washington, first at the Office of War Information, but very soon thereafter at the fledgling Office of Strategic Services, OSS. She was a low-level clerk researcher. And then she must have seen some opportunity and she started organizing the secret files, and she reported directly to the founder of the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, General Wild Bill Donovan, who is one of the amazing side characters in this book. Someone I just really am just fascinated.
We'll totally get back to him. So she, in your book, she kind of weasels her way by being so good into getting a job. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, she started at the lowest level and she worked her way up because she was the take charge person into organizing. Remember, this is a brand new spy organization. They've been there maybe a year. They have files everywhere. They have papers. These are all classified reports, spy reports, diplomatic pouches, and she organizes the file system in which everything is accessible. And she does that through working very long hours, very hard work. She hires the clerks with her. She is the leader of a very important organization with the highest security clearance. And as I don't know if I said it, but she reports directly to the boss. She sits right outside this amazing man's office. She sees the people coming and going. She knows everything that's going on. And she can keep a secret.
And we love her from moment one. We absolutely love Julia Child in this book. And you showcase her early on in the book, almost by comparison with the other women who she is with, what she cares about versus what they care about. And your description of the other women and the milieu in which they live, where they go and what they do and how they look and how different she is in so many ways, really illustrates who she is. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that was to write?
She was a great friend, and she was a loyal friend. And the friends she made during these early years in Washington stuck with her all the way to when they took the troop ship across the Pacific to Bombay in India, and then later to their base in Ceylon. These were really talented, smart women in their own right, very different. They were like the Three Musketeers, and each one of them was different. As we learned later, they all had their own secrets, and some of those secrets are surprising to her, and her secrets were surprising to them. It was a time that people were separated by their secrets, and they did lead to betrayals, and they you did what you had to do out of patriotism.
And all that comes through. It is such a good story, Diana. So there's a moment that I love where she is told by Wild Bill Donovan to find someone to go to India on this special assignment. And she wants to go, and he says no. Can you talk a little bit about that moment? It's not a spoiler in any way, but I just love that how reflective that was of how determined she was and how she went after what she wanted.
Julia is nothing if not determined. In all of this part of her life, we will see how she came to her midlife career and everything that happened to her. She was shaped during this period. So in this case, she liked being in the know in Washington, but the sense of adventure in her drove her to get into the field. As it turned out, you could never get to London because that was most in demand. But she saw an opening during a meeting with her boss with Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten. And she learns of this opening in Delhi, India, and she's determined to go there. Well, no, her boss says, I need you here. You're really running the show. And she says, okay, but she's really kind of hurt and pissed off. So she works in the background and she looks around and seeing who would be capable of, would have the social and organizational skills to run this group of many, many women. They are women, clerks who can keep a secret in Washington. And eventually she lands upon a young woman who's very shy, but she can grow into the role. And Julia maneuvers a way for her boss to accept this other woman.
And one of the things that's so wonderful about her is that throughout the book, she is balancing sort of what she thinks is the right thing to do versus what somebody might tell her to do, or what might be expected of her, on for better or for worse. That is such a powerful person with such an interesting sense of self. Was it fun for you to delve into that her brain process?
I did so much research on this woman, her life and times, but I didn't feel, because I hadn't been a fan, I didn't know everything about her. I had to know everything I could find about Julia. And I read these two remarkable biographies. I read memoirs of her friends. I read about the military and espionage work of that period and all around it. So when I came to be able to write about Julia, I felt I did know her. I found some remarkable personal parallels that made me feel personally connected to her. Our early years in India that shaped us for the rest of our lives, our growing up in Southern California, our lack of interest in food growing up. And so by the end, I felt I could walk in her size 12A shoes, and I did so for the 10 years of this book. But she had a firm moral code. And I know that because her parents were those kind of people. They were really strong, good people who thought of the community. She was patriotic, but she was also someone who believed that she knew what was right. And she had to balance those different parts of her every day, basically. When to keep a secret, when to get to know someone for political or job-related reasons, when to save someone's life, when to allow someone to sacrifice their life for her. So she knew that she had a role, and she had to be honest to herself as best as she could.
And when you're a person like that in wartime, when you're thinking about not only what's best for you, but overwhelmingly what's best for your country and the world, and you know that a lot of things are going on that you can't know, and a lot of processes and a lot of decision, a lot of strategy is going on that you can't know. So your decision-making process is somewhat based on things you don't know. And she had to learn who to trust. How big a role did that play in her life?
Well, that's a great point, because in Washington, she was really literally at the center of everything. And she knew pretty much of what was going on because all the files came through her hands. Now she's transferred to Southeast Asia and China, Burma, India theater, and she only knows the documents. She's not even close to her boss. She communicates with him in secret code, their personal secret code. So she has a lot less information on which to base her decisions and actions. This was something that made her sometimes feel she was moving in the dark. Sometimes she was moving in the dark when she found herself in these brand new posts with no support and no additional information. She had to wing it, but in the most educated way she could, the most honest way she could.
Well, there's some wonderful set pieces. I won't even go into all of them, but her voyage, the cross the ocean voyage to get to the east, gave her a moment of realizing that, she says something wonderful about she wanted to be on the edge of danger, but not in it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, in Washington, she was on the edge of danger. She was in the center, but yet on the periphery of the action. So she was safe. But the braveness that I talked about earlier, her courage, said, no, let's go into the heart of the storm. Let's really do what we can for our country on the land, on the front lines. And so
But she has some harrowing moments. I mean, there are some moments, that some real life or death moments.
She did. When they were transferred to Kunming, they were the bullseye for the Japanese bombers. As she's flying over the hump, over the Himalaya mountains to arrive in Kunming in southern China, those are planes that could have crashed many, many times, taking all aboard, because those are very lumbering planes loaded with supplies that were desperately needed in China. And they were skimming the skyscraper Himalayas. So many of those planes got down. She had a rough time in hers. But according to her friend Betty, in Betty's memoir, Julia read her book the whole time, Shangri-La, during all this harrowing flight. So she was cool in danger. I think afterwards it hit her, but during danger, she was cool and cold, and she did what she had to do.
The scene where she arrives in India, where they disembark from this ship, this troop ship into India, and suddenly she's bombarded with a completely new world. And some people sort of take to it, and some people are terrified of it. And there's a very important character in the book who says to her, some people love this and some people don't. And that's such a crucible in her life too. How did you learn about that moment and that arrival and her connection with India, and then her trip to Ceylon?
When I look back at this book, I think this is the pivotal moment in the story, because when she comes to India and she's bombarded, she's assaulted by all these sensations, colors, people, noises, tumult. She has her first Indian meal. She's always been a meat and potatoes girl. You know, she was raised with a cook. They had very basic food. The first time she got in the kitchen, she was a career girl in New York, and she had to learn to open a can opener, how to operate a can opener of Dinty Moore's stew. So now she's here. She's with her girlfriends at the very posh hotel, at the Taj Mahal Hotel, and they have a meal that, bam, the world is Technicolor. Julia realizes what food can be, how exciting food can be. She is determined to pursue this adventure in food, and goes to the markets and sees all the ingredients and the fresh food, which maybe she's never seen before, fresh food markets. And because this is now, it's the 40s now, but she grew up a lot in the 20s and 30s. So her mind is blown by India and the food she encounters, which becomes a metaphor for her opening to the world. And so this is what I think and going forward is what shapes the Julia that we all know, was the Julia that was the ultimate foodie, but she didn't start that way. It was India that put her on that path.
It's so completely fascinating. We're talking about the secret war of Julia Child with Diana Chambers, and I see so many people here now. Patricia is here, and Deborah Press is here, and Susan Clara Engel is here. Renee Herskowitz is here. It's so nice to see you all. So India, you know about India, and you know about that part of the world. What was it like for you to see a place that you knew through Julia's eyes?
Well, the India of that period was an India I actually knew pretty well, because I had written another book set around that time. So I kind of thought, the part of me that had to learn a little humility thought, oh, I know plenty about this setting. Well, no, I had to learn so much. I had to really dive in the books and I learned a lot about the politics and the political struggles of the era, about the Indian drive for independence. And I had to learn about the war in a theater that hasn't really been written up that much. So it was a real education to me to prepare for this book, and to be able to honestly write it. But because this was, as I said, was one of my big connections with Julia's story, was because it's turned out we both were called to India at about age 30. And those were our formative years. And after that, there was no going back. Julia ultimately met Paul. She ultimately
let's talk about India for 1 second, because the settings throughout this novel are so realistic, how they felt, how they smelled, the animals and the food and the people. And you write it, and we're talking about The Secret War of Julia Child from Source Books, coming out October 22nd. You talk about these things through her eyes and through her senses. So even though they're big picture things about war and politics and politicians and machinations, you make it so gorgeously personal for her, touching an elephant or looking at people who are beggars or trying naan for the first time. What was it like for you to be her in the book?
I think by then, well, from the beginning, I understood Julia's experience and the sense of having these fresh eyes on this place that is just mind-blowing, mind-boggling, and that would put, I think, going back to your earlier question, that did put a lot of people off. Mm-hmm. A lot of people can't bear it. They couldn't bear it, the suffering, and they couldn't see the other side, the beauty, the culture, the color, the food. And so, but she took to it because of her spirit, her great spirit, her openness of life. And so I love that about her. And I identified with that because I had the same experience of falling in love with India and seeing all the goodness and greatness of it. And so I shared that. And there is a lot of me in the Julia that we meet there, but I didn't put it there. It
feels like her. It feels like her. And that's why you tapped into it so beautifully. One of the balances that I'm sure you had to handle in writing a book like this, which is fiction about a real person in a real time. And so for better or for worse, there are some things from the writer's standpoint, there are some things that your readers know or could know. I mean, and it's so much fun. I mean, the moment that Paul Child walks into the book, we're like, oh, we know what's going to happen now. We know this. And that's so much fun. But you also have to balance real, like Lord Mountbatten is such a prominent character, and Wild Bill Donovan is such a prominent character. And those people are real. So how do you balance the reality that we might know with the fiction that you need to make it become real, and also the knowledge that there are endings that we know what happened. We know what happened in the war. We know what happened with Julia and Paul to some extent. Do you know, I'm babbling now, but do you see what I mean? That tightrope that you had to walk between fact and fiction.
Yeah, it was a tightrope because we do know the ending, but in a way, the ending of the war is a big surprise in the book. And I think that's how it was to the people there. Yes. The ending of Julia's relationship with Paul would have shocked her, because when she first met him, she found him one of the most annoying people she'd ever met. He was shorter than her. He was balding. He was older. He was so fastidious with his clothing. He was pedantic and just a basic know-it-all. And she didn't like him at all. But they were on this little base in Kandy, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. And it was a bit like Casablanca. They were in this little corner of the world. And I had this image in my mind there was something of a similarity with that movie, and that they were forced together. They were forced to work together. And in that course of their work, they became friends. They started sharing meals. And then she comes to see his other sides, his more sensitive sides, his good sides. And then eventually he's also a womanizer. So eventually she finds herself a bit jealous. And so I wanted to balance her story, the story of the OSS, the spy stuff in the war, and their relationship. And I didn't want one to take over from the other. And I also wanted it not to be boring. They just hate each other. They just love each other. There's a lot of push-pull going on. And so all these elements were balanced to create a story that still has a movement forward. And we can only hope they get together.
Yes. And I think that one of the things that I hear from writers of historical fiction like this is the place they mine are the gaps in the history that we know, that you don't really know necessarily what somebody wore, although sometimes you do, depending on what there is in the research that you discover. What was it like putting the big picture puzzle together when set to fill in the missing pieces for your story?
Yeah, the gap. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. There's so much we don't know. There's a lot we don't know, particularly in this theater of war, that has been less written up. That and in her era, the classified vow the vows she took of secrecy, she held to the end of her days. I was only a file clerk, so I had a lot of room to expand, but I had to remain true to what I had learned, and I did massive amounts of research, massive. And I had been studying India all my life, and I knew quite a bit about China. So I had a base to start with. That's why I dared begin this book, because I had a solid base, but I had to go way, way deeper, more far afield. And always Julia was at the center of it, imagining how all this would strike her. And I did know things about what she wore. I knew about her big feet. I knew how hard it was to find a pair of shoes. So to find clothes that fit, feminine clothes, because she really wanted to look nice. It was very difficult for her. Her hair frizzing at the humidity. Well, we all know that in Asia there's a constant humidity. So I knew a lot from her diary and from her biographies of what she did struggle with. What were the challenges? But she's a professional woman at the same time. So but they're in Asia. They're in a place where everyone's wearing shorts and unironed shirts. So, and I learned when she first got to wear sandals, and imagine her tootsies, her toes being free, and she didn't worry about getting water on her shoes and ruining them.
And the meet cute that you create between Paul and Julia, is that true, or is that of your romantic imagination?
I wrote that scene.
Okay.
Because I think they had to meet somewhere. And I just thought it was a wonderful way to bring in both their characters. She's wearing her best outfit to walk to work, and he's, could care less that he splashes water all over her, and he has no idea that she'll never be able to get these clothes again.
And it's so many wonderful scenes in this book, and so many of them have many, many, many layers. And I have like 500 more questions, but I don't have time to ask them. But I do want to ask you two more, and that is, and then we'll get to the audience questions. There's just a lot about gorgeous maps in this book, and I love the idea of a map being the expression of what someone thinks the world looks like or wants it to look like. And they can mean so many things. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of maps in this book?
I'm so glad you brought that up. My mind has been a little flooded, and maps are key. I think food and maps are key in this book. And maps are something that are so important to me. And I was able to find authentic period maps to put in it. And then look at Julia. She's looking for the map to her life. And then look at Paul. He's a map maker. I didn't make that up. He really was the map maker at a time that she really didn't know her way forward. And so the first thing I do when I go anywhere or start to begin to study a place, I look at the maps. And it's very important to me as a writer to place my characters in the real world and to understand where they're located, what is the weather like, how do they move through the streets. And I feel like I did that in this book. I did that, and I visited all the locations
so gorgeously. And I don't want that to let go, that you visited all the locations, you all. When you read this book, and I know you will be in awe of that. And especially in a war, the map is so powerful because you move a line a certain way or move a line another way. And those are people's lives that you're talking about. It's just a massive, powerful difference. A map can actually reveal that. When we finish this book, let me ask you that instead. When your readers finish this book, how do you want us to feel at the end?
I want us to understand that Julia is so much more than what the woman that we think we know, the woman everyone thinks they know. She was brave. She held fast to her dream of living a creative life. I think that was at the heart of all her desires. She did want to find love, and she found love, but she was she did it in the heart of the storm, and her love with Paul came in the midst of the horror and death, terrible pain. And so her desire to understand the fullness of life's experience and to serve her country brought her into this terrible time. And through that terrible time, she found the love of her life, and a man that, before we end, I have to tell you, was the most wonderful man, the most supportive husband, really a remarkable feminist before his time. His great talent he put aside in support of her middle-aged career. And they were just a perfect couple. And Julia found herself, and she also found the man of her life during this period.
And we will never think of her the same way. Your readers will never think of Julia Child the same way again. And for that, we are incredibly grateful. Susan Clara Engel says, Julia was so much more. You are exactly right. And
bravo, that's true.
Proven in this book. I know we have so many questions. Can we have a couple of questions, Margaret? Let's see who is curious about something about this book. Renee says, is France your favorite country? Hi, Renee. If not, what place is your favorite destination? Ooh, I want to hear this.
Well, the last few years, I've been spending several months a year in Aix-en-Provence in the south of France. I've spent a lot of time in Paris, and probably that is the first place I go back to. I also have a very deep connection to India, but I would say France. I would say France.
Can't go wrong with France. Definitely not. Who else has a question? Is there a bibliography we can access? Hey, Randy, to learn more about what into this book. The book screams, do additional reading. Yes, you have all of that. Talk a little bit about that.
In the author's note, I have a friend editor at the very beginning who said to me, she said, you have to have an extensive author's note at the end of this book to show how you got to your conclusions. And I did though. That's about 5 or 6 pages. And I tell you all the main books that I read. So that's all, and my reasoning behind the choices I made. So I think that's important to read. You can save to read it at the end. Probably better to read it at the end, but you can read it at the beginning too.
I mean,
it is a work of fiction. I want to emphasize, this is a work of fiction, which I only dared write based on, as I said, massive research, and it's a piece of speculation based on what I think is the truth of Julia's character.
You can feel the massive research in this book. And I want to read you just one line of this author's note. She says, nonetheless, I offer my story as one that exists only in the realm of possibility, a personal interpretation inspired by admiration and respect. I hope all my readers will see it that way. And we do indeed. It is a wonderful homage. Shall we have just one last question? What structure? Oh, structure, says Susan. What structure do you write your books? How did you do this?
Well, I went through a lot of changes on this book. I first started writing in third person. Then I went to first person. Then on my editor's suggestion, very gentle suggestion, I went back to third person, and I felt that was able to expand the story I could tell. And my structure is I read a lot, I travel, and I work hard. I just keep writing. Well, it's not easy.
It's absolutely a page turner, full of incredible, larger than life characters. Not only Julia Child and Paul Child, but Lord Mountbatten and Wild Bill Donovan, and a raft of brave men and women, some of whom are a little iffy, and you will enjoy, in the wartime way, you will enjoy them all. There are adventures, there is India, there is danger, there is the East, there is the war, and there is, above all, our beloved Julia Child, who we already loved, and after you read this, you will love her even more. Let's see who is going to win a copy of The Secret War of Julia Child, and we will spin the wheel of fun. Oh, look at all these people. That's so great. And the winner is... Katie Crutchfield. Katie, I think you won last week, didn't you? But at the request of Randy. So let's spin one more time so we can make sure that everybody has a chance to win. We'll see whoever comes up with it this time. And that is Randy. All right, Randy, let's spin one more time. You two are lucky, Randy and Katie. Your names have come up. And we're going to give it to whoever this is this time for sure. And that is Kathy Lanigan. All right, Kathy, that is marvelous. Congratulations, Kathy Lanigan. I hope I will see you tonight at the book launch for Paula Mounier at Gibson's Bookstore in Concord, New Hampshire at 6:30 tonight. I'll be there with the fabulous Paula Mounier for her new book, The Night Woods. But right now, Kathy, you have won the Secret War of Julia Child. You're going to email me. We will email our executive producer, and their executive producer will email Diana's publicists, and they will get you your book. And that is how this works. The rest of you, run. Pre-order this book right now. It is not out until October 22nd, but you're going to want to snap up your copy. And I can tell you, because Diana can't because it's pushy, but I can, that those pre-orders really make a difference in an author's career. So click, run, and pre-order your copy of The Secret War of Julia Child. You will absolutely love it. Go ahead. I see you want to say something, Diana.
I want to thank Hank, whom I have admired, whose life I admire. And I admire her even more for being such a gracious host, I'm really so honored to be invited here. And I'm very tearful. And thank you for helping make this go as well as it did. And thank you for introducing me to your audience.
Oh, my pleasure. What fun to read such a good book and to get to talk with the author about such a fabulous subject. So this is win. I really am grateful to you for that. Thank you. Quickly, before I let you go, let me tell you who we are talking to next week. First, at 3:00, This Cursed House by Del Sandine. I mean, not for the faint of heart. This Cursed House by Del Sandine. I can't wait for you to hear about this. On the cover, it says, "Some things are best left buried." So is this not a Halloween book? Look at that orange and green. Del Sandine, we will meet her. She is terrific. And then at 4:00 next week, look, the Puzzle Box. I know, I agree, Diana. She's amazing. Danielle Trussoni's second book, which is, you read The Puzzle Master, right? I guess this is her third book. The second in the series of the same person. I'm losing myself here. The Puzzle Box, Danielle Trussoni, absolutely twisty, turny, is only Danielle Trussoni can write. This is absolutely riveting, and I can't wait to hear all about the intricacies of this book. I don't know how Danielle Trussoni's brain works, but it works in some
smart.
Yeah, I guess that's the bottom line. Works in some incredibly amazing and intricate ways, all of which are shown off gorgeously in her new book, The Puzzle Box. So that is next Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET. Be here. 3:00 for Del Sandine, 4:00 for Danielle Trussoni. Do not miss that. And today we had the absolute joy of talking with Diana Chambers about her new book, which is under the pile now, Secret War of Julia Child. So run and get this book for yourself. Diana, thank you. Happy travels for your new book. I hope you continue your triumphs.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for being here. And it's been wonderful. Thanks.
For me too. And we are so pleased that you all have joined us here today. We love seeing you on Crime Time. And we hope to see you next week right here at 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.